know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. And this week we are talking about an album released in the year 2007. And if you want to hear more thoughts on that, if you head over to patreon.com/punklotopod, what did we talk about last week?
We talked about records that came out in 2007. We did a Rate Your Music chart dive on the overall charts for 2007 because we have done a punk chart previously. So we kind of avoided the punk records for the most part in going through the charts and came to some conclusions about the year 2007. I think we'll probably delve into more related thoughts on the year and the music of the time period and what we were listening to at the time.
Yeah. In 2007, we were still very much in like a metal phase, as well as like the experimental stuff that was along with that. So we were listening to a lot of that kind of stuff.
Also, like some metalcore.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, we wound up skipping that stuff, though, because that falls under the punk umbrella. So we were...
Yeah, we're going to look at the punk charts.
Yeah,
on
we're
the
going to
main
look at some
episode,
stuff.
so...
Yeah. Also, over there, I am continuing my series, the 21st Century Breakdown, where I rank the top 100 albums of the 21st century, at least according to me, my taste, and my personal picks. And that should be up there by the time this episode goes up. There's some other stuff as well, like mobile movie reviews, where I did a review of In the Heat of the Night. I have one coming for 28 Days Later. I just watched that one last night as we record this, so I'll have some audio up about that. There's some Moon Pies for Misfits out there, where I try the new Green Day Slushy, or Slurpee, excuse me. It's the 7-Eleven branding. And yeah, lots of content over there on the Patreon. If you sign up at the $5 tier, that means you are our producers, and that means you get your name said every single week on the show. So shout out our producers now. Thank you to Dave Brown, writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. Thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. Thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. And thank you to Zach in Oregon. So if you want your name said...
Zach, who was briefly in Scottsdale.
That's right. Briefly in Scottsdale. Dylan's old stomping grounds for work.
Very close to where I worked in Scottsdale. If he was around the Fashion Square Mall, then he was very close to the office building that I made coffee in for about 6 months until I couldn't handle it anymore. I did work at a different place in Scottsdale, but it was a little further away.
And as a producer, you get access to a once-a-month exclusive bonus audio where we focus on one EP. And we can go ahead and name the winners on that one. So we're going to be talking about Chronic Town by REM. So be on the lookout for that towards the end of the month. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode and choose the album we devote an entire episode to, head over to patreon.com and join at the $10 tier. It's a one-time $10 donation, and you get to choose what we're going to talk about. So all of that is at Punk Lotto Pod on Patreon. All right, let's get into this. So 2007, I guess we could do a little bit of what were you up to in 2007?
I was a teenager. I turned 17 in 2007. I would have been playing in the metalcore death metal band that I started in high school or joined in high school. Would have been playing football. And 2007 would have been starting my last year of home high school. So we also would have been... 2007, we would have been fully hanging out pretty much daily with our neighbor who wrote letters to serial killers. I don't think he had started doing that yet. Maybe it was just starting to get into that.
For me in 2007, that was the year that I failed out of college and had to move back home.
So you slept on my floor.
Yep, the floor in your bedroom, because they had given my bedroom to our younger brother. And so, yeah, I guess that was part of the punishment. You're sleeping on the floor. But that's also punishing you, so I don't know what you did wrong. But
our family moved fast to switch rooms over.
Yeah.
Because my room turned into, well, my parents got a bed and then a new bed, and then so their old bed got put in my room. Or actually, it got moved into what used to be your room that was our younger brother's room. When I moved out, our younger brother got moved into my room. And then eventually I got that bed frame, and then that turned into what is now basically just a gigantic comic book and action figure collection storeroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have heard that our younger brother, who has moved out this year, they got a new bed and put it in his room.
Yep.
Already.
Yep.
So they move fast.
The second the room is open, they're like, I'm taking this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like as soon as because I don't even actually really understand why they moved him from my room to your room when you moved out. Like that one didn't even make sense because it's just like it's two rooms that are pretty much the same.
I think they just wanted to put their bed into a room, and they were just like, it's closer. We don't want to move this whole bed down the hall.
Yeah,
it was probably easier if the angle,
Musically, yeah, you were still playing in the death metal band, and I was going to those shows pretty regularly with you. And hanging out at practices and lots of like just hanging out at under the guise of band practice, which was just like hours and hours and hours just hanging out at the bass player's garage and house. So
yeah, going to cookout.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a little more 2008, late 2007.
Yeah, that would have been because I would have been home and had a car, and then you could we could go places and you weren't stuck at home. Yeah, and I started working at Barnes & Noble that year. I stayed there for 5 years. I was driving up to Asheville pretty regularly.
We both would have been going to community college, too.
Yeah, that's right, because I was on the, what do you call it? The redemption arc, where I was trying to, get my grades back down.
Yeah.
Or up to a degree where I could, get my financial aid again. But that never happened. Dropped a lot of classes. Barely went to class for a bunch of stuff. A lot of that was due to, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to school to go to school, but I don't know what I want to do. And now in hindsight, I'm like, man, I should have gone and broadcasting like I wound up doing, 20 years later. But yeah, interesting point in our lives. Still very young, I would have been. So you would have been 17. So that would have put me right. I was 2021 around that time. So yeah. Musically, yeah, we weren't super duper into punk rock yet. There were bands we liked and metalcore and hardcore stuff we were probably listening to, but we didn't know a lot of the good stuff yet. And what do you want to do first? Do you want to look at charts or do you want to talk about the stuff you almost picked?
Let's look at the charts.
Okay.
Because it feels like that flows more from where we were at that time.
Yeah.
And what we were listening to, because I feel like that kind of weighs heavily on the charts. It's pretty well represented. Maybe not this first page.
Yeah. We got to rate your music and go to the punk charts. And yeah, the number one record's an LCD Sound System record. Boo, does not need to be there. It's not actually a punk record. Whatever.
Yeah, the entire top 5, it's not punk. Doesn't really even come from punk. Post-punk revival, at most. But it's all big bands.
Yeah.
And indie bands, pretty much.
Yep.
The next few records, though, a little more representative of the time period.
Yeah, AJJ, People Can Eat People, are the luckiest people in the world. That's the first record I would have heard by them. Released on, I believe it was Asian Man Records, put it out. Yeah, initially they put it out too. And loved that record. Fell in love with that band thanks to that record. Dug into their entire discography and then followed everything they did after that. So that's a pretty important record, for me personally, and you as well.
One that was not quite on our radar that year, but we found it not long after. I would have spent, we talked a little bit about this, and this is, I guess, the part we can dig into, a good jumping off point. I listened to that Between the Buried and Me record, Colors, a shitload.
Yeah.
That record came out, and then I was all in on E.T. Bam. Got very obsessive about bands and records. You would download something and listen to it 5 times that week. That the first week that you had something. A pretty representative midpoint of our being heavily into metalcore and smart metal in 2007, which we talked about a lot on the Patreon this week. But, yeah, lots of sludge.
Yeah, a lot of sludge. Well, let's name some stuff that we have previously covered from the year 2007 so we don't hit some duplicates here. But in episode 288, we covered the Dillinger Escape Plan's Ire Works. That was a big record. In 07, maybe? You would have been listening to it? If not, 07, 08 as well.
Yeah, I feel like we were listening to that pretty soon after it came out.
Yeah. That record is still in my top 5, thanks to you listening to it. I mean, I listened to it a lot too, so I guess it is actually a combined effort. And then we listened to it a bunch for the show, so I made it up there. In episode 259, we did Bader Brains, the complete unfinished works of the Young Tigers, an album we were not aware of in 2007.
Not at all.
Episode 193, we did Yeah Yeah Yeah's Is with Chad of Perennial.
Hey, I'm going to see Chad next week.
That's right.
This episode's going to go up the day of the show, I guess, probably.
Yeah. But yeah, Perennial Major Awards playing in Los Angeles, California. If you're hearing this the day the episode drops and you're in LA, go check them out.
Yeah, we're at Permanent Records Roadhouse.
In episode 142, we did Paramore's Riot. We did that one with Angie from Resonating Zine and guest co-host Adam Yo. This was a vacation episode, I suppose.
That was me moving.
Maybe, yeah, right. That was a record that we would have been aware of in 2007, but we weren't listening to.
Oh, yeah, we knew all the singles.
Yeah, they were played on Fuse, which we would watch pretty regularly at said metalhead's house.
Yeah.
Episode 97, we did the fucking Wrath Season of Evil with Body Farm. Definitely not aware of that one in 2007, and I was not aware of it until they brought that album to us to talk about. Episode 67, we did American Steel's Destroy Their Future along with Trap Them's Seance Prime in our old album EP format. And then episode number 5, we did the Gaslight Anthem Sink or Swim and The Main's The Way We Talk EP. So, Sink or Swim, that's a pretty big record for you as a big old gas head that you are.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one that should have been listening to in 2007, but was not until 2008.
To be fair, I don't think they were on a lot of people's radar in 2007.
No, not that record.
It's the next one where people went backwards and got into their stuff. Though there was like a push for the earlier, like the last record before 69 Sound. That's what the
Nice.
That's what the Off With Their Heads compilation was going to be called that never came about. But yeah, 59 Sound came out, but in advance of that, like they were kind of like pushing, some of the singles off Sink or Swim. Let's see. We skipped all the punk stuff we could when we were going through the charts on the Chart Dive. A record that is more notable to me now, wasn't so much at the time, but Coheed Cambria, at least Good Apollo and Burning Star, Volume 2, No World for Tomorrow, which is the end of that like classic run of the band, because the very next record was like the prequel album with the guy from Dillinger Escape Plan playing drums, and that record sounds bad. Even all these years later, the production is bad for it. It's muddy. It's a bad production on that one. But No Worlds for Tomorrow is like a continuation of the other albums. They're getting a little bit more intricate with their songwriting at this point. Definitely leaning more into the prog element of their sound. I didn't love that one as much when I first got into them. And I was listening, I think the first 4 albums were out when I started getting into them. And that was my least favorite. And it still is my least favorite of those first 4. But it's grown on me since then. Like now it's definitely like one of their best records in their catalog. I mean, I guess in that same vein, Circa Survive released On Letting Go. That proggy post-hardcore emo sound has copycats.
Yeah, that's a sound that has kind of come back.
A little bit. Yeah. It has a little bit. There was a period where there were a bunch of copycats, probably around this time period, like after the 2 Good Apollo records. There were a bunch of bands kind of doing the prog emo thing. But yeah, there's a little bit more, and then it died down because it was just Coheed doing that sound again. I guess Circa Survive was still doing stuff, but they even took a break for a while there while Anthony Green did his solo stuff. But it's back a little bit. Notable record. This is too low. New Wave by Against Me came out that year. Like that should be in like the top 20.
Yeah, that should be a page 1. I'm surprised that's so unpopular.
Yeah, it's.
It's page 2. It's not that unpopular, but
right. But I feel like it should be higher than a lot of the stuff we've already looked at here. That's a big record. That was a huge record. People were not happy with that album. People were very upset with that record. They didn't like the mainstream major label Against Me. But there were some good songs on that album. I think people kind of overreacted.
Well, I mean, when you were the pickle jar, folk, punk, dumpster diving.
Yeah.
Band
Basing yourself off
with.
of Crass's ethos.
Yeah.
The black t-shirts only with no logos or band names on them because you're that much in love with Crass. Yeah. I could see that being a little bit like, you betrayed us. And she'd betray us again in the future. Don't worry about that. Let's see. What's notable? A record that was big in like the scene that we were listening to music from would be Messengers by August Burns Red, but that's not a record that I ever cared about. That's a band I never cared about.
August Burns Red.
It was like the more Christian As I Lay Dying, and it was just like, okay. Which, now that I'm really thinking about it, As I Lay Dying were kind of like talked about as a Christian band, but they weren't, right? That was fake.
They weren't. That was fake.
Yeah.
That was, I don't even know where anyone got the idea that they were a Christian band.
I think there was a connection to Society's Finest. I think there were some members of Society's Finest who played.
Call Society's Finest a Christian band.
I mean, they were on Tooth and Nail and Solid State, but yeah, once they got outside of that too, they even were like, yeah, we're not really a Christian band. But Jimmy Eat World's Chase This Light was released that year. This is the record. This follows Futures, and probably the last big record from them, as far as like people were still paying attention to what Jimmy Eat World was doing.
Yeah.
And now they're just a
that would
legacy
be the
band.
last record to really. I mean, it was the last one on Interscope, because then they were on DGC, which is
isn't that a Jawbreakers label?
I guess DGC was the David Geffen company.
Yeah,
so it's still ostensibly a major,
right?
It wouldn't be a sub label of Geffen, sub label of Interscope, but yeah. Downgrading from the bigger label.
Yeah. I purchased on CD, on compact disc, Super Taranta by Gogol Bordello, purely based on their performance on, was it Letterman they were on? As like the musical guest? And I was like, this song's pretty good. And I'm at this point, I was very susceptible to the gimmick bands. If it was a gimmick, I'm like, ooh, what's this? I gotta see what that's about. So the Gogol Bordello was a band I was paying attention to and kind of like had dipped in my interest. And then this record came out and I was like, I should listen to that. And I bought a copy of it. And it has some decent songs on it, but.
And still, interesting that we were discovering bands on late night.
Yeah.
Like Letterman and Conan.
Yeah.
Musical guests. It's just funny that was. I don't think we were even like. By that point, I don't think we were even regularly watching late night. It was just be like, maybe watch it sometimes.
Yeah, I was more watching Conan when I was before I went to college. I was like even like taping the episodes and going to bed and then like watching it the next day. Found a lot of stuff that way. And in '07, would we have been like, yeah, we probably would have been staying up late watching Craig Ferguson a bunch during that time period.
Yeah.
Late show. Well, anything else you want to look at the charts before we talk about your considerations?
No.
I was going to say, there's no one thing happening in '07 as I'm scrolling through these records. It's kind of a lot of it's like a scattershot of different kinds of stuff.
The biggest thing is the broad umbrella of Hot Topic, Vans Warped Tour, emo, pop punk, metalcore, hardcore, melodic hardcore, post-hardcore stuff of this time period. Still very strong scene, I guess, if you want to have a simpler catch-all for that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely very scene core centric period.
Which was, I mean, and I think I've said this recently on the show, but like that was the biggest, I think was the biggest moment for punk as a subculture to being mainstream.
Yeah, because there were bands who were bigger, like, Green Day, Offspring, Blink-182, all that stuff was way, way bigger, but it wasn't like a scene. It wasn't like this whole grouping of bands. That was just a case of, here's the du jour punk band, that's getting attention at the moment.
It's it's bigger than, oh, it's 1994 and Everybody Has Dookie by Green Day.
Yeah.
It's 2006. It's like 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
where a lot of kids are listening to relatively obscure bands.
I mean, I guess we can blame MySpace for a lot of that. You know?
I mean, MySpace and Fuse and
Warped Tour itself. Yeah.
Warped Tour itself. Yeah.
And Hot Topic. Yeah, it was enough like of a cottage industry there to kind of get. I mean, it's thanks to like having gigantic bands like My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy, like really bringing things,
Yeah.
to mainstream attention.
And I mean, even like Thursday,
Yeah.
sing scream music
Yeah.
being as popular as it was that early. And it was so big that I was playing shows regularly in a metalcore band with a bunch of high schoolers in Hickory, North Carolina,
Yeah.
which is not known for music,
No.
not even within the state.
Right. Yeah, at the time, like, there were a lot of bands. Like, there were probably a good, like, 10 to 15 bands that we were pulling into town to play fairly regularly. Now, some of them came from, like, Charlotte, and, but a good chunk of it was Hickory-based. Like, there was some, like, there was, like, some Statesville bands we brought in, but it was mainly, like, local. Very local.
There were probably almost 10 just Hickory bands that were playing hardcore and metalcore and metal. Like,
hey, let's see if we can name as many as we can. All right.
Jeez.
All the Living, number 1. When Green Shatters Black. Was Onward to Olympus.
No, they were a Charlotte band.
Charlotte, okay.
Oh, what was Closed Casket Funeral?
Mm-hmm.
Michael and the Fat Guys, if you want to count. They were part of that scene. They were playing thrash prog metal, but like...
Yeah. Chaos Must Bow, was that their name?
It was Chaos something.
Chaos of Tomorrow. Chaos of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm
what was
blanking now.
Ethan's band?
Gates.
Yeah.
Gates of Assyria?
Was it Gates of Assyria?
I think so. And then they later became Violent Ends.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like there's more, but
There's
blanking
more.
on who they were. Those are the regulars. Like, those are the ones who played a lot. Maybrick Diaries, where were they a Statesville band?
I think they might have been from Charlotte or Statesville.
Oh, okay. There were a few Charlotte bands who would come play regularly in Hickory. What was the band that Damien dude was from? The other Damien.
I don't know. I'm blanking. There were a lot of short-lived ones.
Yeah. Played like 2 shows, and that was kind of it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we named like 5 there. We named probably like half of the ones that were local, and then there was other stuff too going on. There was actually other music. Like, there was like noise, and like a lot of noise actually.
Oh, yeah,
with, like,
yeah.
Big Mark and all his scene, like all those people.
Yeah.
Phase and
weird
Projecticism.
scene of musicians was completely insulated from
Yeah.
what we were doing, but
Yeah, and the few times they overlapped was pretty funny. Because we would play the same coffee shop. And a lot of those guys worked at that coffee shop. And so they would have like, one night we'll have Human Pippi Longstockings. And then the next night we'll have these metalcore fucks. Yeah.
yeah. But
A time period where like, there were bands everywhere. Shows happening all the time. And we were shuttering businesses because of it.
you had redneck kids from Conover with flat iron hair and gauges.
Yeah. The kids these days, they don't play music.
No.
They want to be YouTubers and Twitch streamers now.
And as big as hardcore is at the moment, like there's probably kids in Hickory listening to Turnstile, but nobody's playing music.
That comes from having nowhere to play. We have like 3 music venues here that consist entirely of like cover bands. And it's like, why do we have so many of these venues? Nobody play, or like Afro Man was just here.
Yeah.
Like Afro Man in 2025 was just here. We had Josie Scott's Saliva here, not the other Saliva. Like that's what we get here.
Yeah.
Eagles covers band, Tom Petty cover band.
The kind of stuff that plays, the equivalent here is like bands that go play at like the Hemet Theater next to the Salton Sea, Inland Empire.
Well, we've been talking a lot. So let's talk about the ones that you almost selected for us to talk about for this episode. So what do you got there?
All right. So when I was looking at the '07 charts, there was stuff that certainly jumped out to me, like AJJ. We've done the Gaslight Anthem record, and there's stuff that. Which, have we done that AJJ record? No, actually, we haven't.
No, we did. Did we do?
But
we did Can't Maintain, right?
Can't Maintain. We've talked about AJJ in general a lot on the show, and that was the thing, is like the stuff that kind of jumps out to me. It's like, well, we've maybe talked about some of this stuff too much lately. So I was more looking for records by bands that we haven't talked about so much on the show. Particularly, I was looking for records that I felt like were representative of the era to some degree. And I had some considerations that I think maybe a little more so, but I did send you A New Beat from a Dead Heart by 108 because it's a good record. Not necessarily representative of the era, but 108 is a band that isn't really representative of any specific era of punk. Kind of a long career, and certainly has connections to, hardcore history prior to them. So they feel probably a little more of their own thing, kind of more timeless than I was really looking for. So I didn't consider that one for very long.
I feel like they are tied more to like the early 90s hardcore metalcore scene, especially a lot of the Christiancore stuff happening at the time because they were a Christian band. And yeah, they were around with like Shelter and that kind of stuff going on. But they do, I think, I don't know if they predate Shelter, but they're like right there with them as far as when they started. And I'll probably get to that record in, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years? I don't know how long it'll take me to get to them in the Metalcore Chronicles, but it'll be a while.
Maybe not representative of, well, okay, I guess to some degree it is, but not for us personally. But Grand Ledge by Paul Barabeau came out in '07. I did screenshot that one and send that to you. I have considered Paul Barabeau in the past, I feel like, and haven't pulled the trigger. And it's kind of interesting. I think he's an interesting musician to dig into on this show someday, because I think that there's his records I listened to a lot for a while, for a few years, mostly through college, and then pretty much immediately it's like somebody turned off the lights, just stopped listening to Paul Barabeau records. He stopped putting them out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's probably because he quit making new ones.
But then it's just like, since then, the desire to go back to those records has been kind of small, and I have revisited at least one of them in recent years, and wasn't that thrilled by it. And I would be curious to see. That's one of those. That's a record that I think the lens that I would be looking at it is, does this hold up? So that was kind of my consideration for that record.
Yeah, does anybody know what happened to him? Like, why did he just disappeared, right?
I follow him on Instagram.
Still?
He just, like, lives in, what? Where does he live? Ohio? Indiana? Michigan? I think he's Michigan.
Yeah, I think it's Michigan, yeah.
He just, like, lives in Michigan. I don't know what he does. He has, like, a surf band or something. I don't know. He loves his Stratocasters. And he'll sometimes post, like, a little bit of art. Just a guy. I don't know.
He looks like he goes to estate sales, because he's got, like, 2 estate sale posts back-to-back in Minnesota. Oh, is he in...
Maybe he's in Minnesota now. I don't know. I think
Twin Cities Drum originally. Collective. Yeah, that's funny.
A record that is very representative of the era that I was considering. The Chariots, The Fiancé, their second LP?
Yes, because they did... The Unsung EP was after. But yeah, it's the second LP.
Which is, looking back, I would say is their best record. I've heard the records they put out after it.
Mm-hmm.
They're weirdly popular.
Yeah.
And...
Still don't get it. Is it because they weren't on Solid State?
Yeah.
They just were on E-Music and something else. Good Fight, maybe?
Yeah, Good Fight. The Fiancé, that's a record I would have bought in 2007. Probably the month it came out, probably the week it came out. I remember, man, did the Camry that I was driving for a while have a CD player? Or did it have a tape deck and I had an adapter?
I think it had a tape player.
So it must have had a tape player and I had a tape CD player adapter.
Yeah.
I remember
Burn
listening.
copy.
I distinctly remember listening to this record in that car.
Right.
That car that had a cracked block.
Really?
That we had to take the radiator overflow tank and dump it back into the radiator every time I drove it.
It was free!
Yeah, we got it for free. And then we blew it up.
Yeah.
And I listened to that Chariot record all the time in 2007. That would be a fun one to revisit. I don't know that I would like it now. I'm not sure. Maybe. I might still get some enjoyment out of it. But, yeah, that was very representative of the chug-wee mathcore, metalcore stuff going on in 2007. Definitely was a lot of what we were listening to.
Yeah, so we should dive into the record we're talking about today. So you were given the year 2007, and you selected Risk Revival by Hot Cross. Stats on the band. Hot Cross were from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They formed in the year 2000. And this album was released February 20th, 2007 on Hope Division and Equal Vision Records. And this is the band's second full-length album. And the personnel is Matt Smith on bass, Greg Drudy on drums, Casey Boland on guitar, and Billy Werner on vocals. And the album was recorded by Josh Jacobowski. And yeah, we got some stats and stuff and backstory going on a little bit later, but what made you choose this record for us to talk about?
Well, I wanted to talk about something different, I guess. I wanted to talk about something we haven't really talked about on the show, and we've never done a Hot Cross record, and we've covered some screamo from this era, but not much in this particular vein, and I think this record is interesting in where it comes from, and its connection to true screamo, and then what this band actually sounds like. I feel like this record in particular, and this band in general, sounds like the authentic version of mainstream screamo.
Right, because it's an Equal Vision record. So yeah, I get what you're saying there. Yeah, it is more representative of the Scrams. Were they saying Scrams in 07? I think they were, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it was a new Scrams band. That's kind of like how it was thought of at the time, and not this like fake screamo that was everywhere else, which was all over Equal Vision's records, record label. Yeah, do you remember when you first got into them?
I believe it was 2008.
So a little later, yeah.
Because I didn't get into the true screamo stuff until probably 2008. when I would have started listening to like City of Caterpillar and Circle Takes the Square and Page 99, just downloading all of that stuff off of blogs. But I do distinctly remember getting into Hot Cross. Gosh, it's so hard to not say Hot Snakes.
Every time I wrote it in my notes, I wanted to write Hot Snakes.
I would have downloaded Hot Cross from a blog in the summer of 2008, which feels later than I thought it was. But I was like, I know it wasn't 2007, so it had to be 2008. And it was probably July of 2008, and we were on vacation. Because I remember being at Beach House on Oak Island, and we had internet, it had Wi-Fi, and downloading a bunch of shit. And
We went mad with internet connection.
Yeah. Probably downloaded a bunch of drone records.
Eating up your hard drive space.
And some screamo records. And I do remember downloading this record and listening to it and thinking, this is really cool. Like, I like this a lot. This is fun. The riffs are cool. The voice is cool. It's kind of catchy. And would have probably downloaded the rest of their discography over the next year. You know, maybe all of it, or may even gotten a lot of it all at one time. I don't remember. But then I listened to them a whole bunch in college, and I want to say I bought a Hot Cross t-shirt from Shirt Killer in like September and ordered it to my dorm, to my mailbox at college. And I remember wearing that Hot Cross t-shirt all the time. That was in my regular t-shirt rotation for years and years. I know for a fact I can go find pictures of me wearing that shirt on like my Facebook. Just pictures I would have been tagged in or whatever. And that t-shirt weirdly had gotten so many comments from people. The first of which being like hot cross buns. So I'm wearing that at my Christian college where absolutely no one has heard of the post Saetia screamo band Hot Cross. And then I want to say there was another time I was wearing it in Asheville. I was getting my first tattoo actually. And one of the tattoo artists was like, "Oh, did you see them when they played here?" And it would have probably been 2007 before they broke up. And I was like, "No, I think they broke up before I found out about them."
But yeah, thinking that of course they played Asheville. That is exactly the type of city that band would have played in.
Yeah. Yeah, probably a house.
Yep. See, we were talking about Hickory and their shows. Asheville's kind of gone the same way. There's not as many punk and hardcore bands playing around in Asheville. There are bands up there, but they're not doing a lot. And the ones that do play are they play a Static Age, and that's kind of it. And even then, that's rare. They don't do a ton of shows there anymore. So it's kind of everywhere. I don't know.
Does the Auditorium not do?
Not very much local. I mean, there's some. The hardcore stuff that gets booked there is because there's usually a headliner, and then there are some locals that get brought in. But
yeah,
it's not a place where it's just local hardcore bands playing all the time. Not really. So I'll do my Hot Cross connection. It's you. They were not one of my bands. I do kind of remember that this was a time period where we were really starting to not diverge, but go off in our own directions of exploration. Because prior to this, we would just very much if one of us found something, we would just have the other person listen to it, and it was just a very mutual here's this, listen to this, just very back and forth. And because we were in the same house, so it was very easy to do that. It's when I went to college a little bit, but I think it started to do that a little bit more whenever you went to college, and then you started getting into all your stuff there. I do distinctly remember we were hanging out at the after our band practice, and you weren't there. Maybe you'd already left or something, or I was just there, just hanging out. And this is the time period where you would put your songs on MySpace. Whatever songs you liked would be on your MySpace. They would play automatically every time you went to somebody's page. Now I'm oh, that's horrible. why would you want that? Go to somebody's page and it just starts blasting you with music? No thanks. But that was a drawing point.
You have to go mute shit on Instagram.
Yeah.
If you accidentally open Instagram with the media turned up, it's like, oh, stop it.
And I do remember that we were hanging out with the gang, and they were talking about the music that you had on your MySpace, and like you would have been listening to Hot Cross, and then I distinctly remember them being like, I don't like any of the stuff that Dylan puts on his MySpace, and I distinctly remember one of them saying, "Fuck Circle Takes the Square," just because of how annoying he thought it was. And I remember thinking at that time, I was like, I don't know, that's his thing. I don't know. I mean, I've heard the stuff. I think it's fine, but it's not, those aren't my bands. So that's kind of my extent of Hot Cross. I think I was with you when you bought a copy of it on vinyl, or maybe you probably bought it at Lunchbox, if you bought that record.
I want to say I do have that record. I think I have both LPs.
Yeah. So it was one of them, I think I was with you when you bought it. But yeah. Again, it was something that like I heard and I liked, but it was like not a thing that I like listened to regularly on my own. Let's do a little backstory, because you did hint at it there. So, prior to Hot Cross forming, a lot of the members of the band, well, two of them specifically, Billy Werner and Greg Drudy, played in the legendary screamo band Saetia. Greg is also the owner and operator of Level Plane Records, and Matt Smith played in Off Minor, and Casey Boland played in You and I. So it was a little bit of a supergroup kind of going on here, all screamo bands. Saetia was they were kind of big. It was one of the cases of they were just a band and then they break up and then they become like this legend. They just became this like, oh my God, Saetia was this incredible band. And I read interviews with Billy Werner where he was talking about like, people talked about it after the fact, like it was like this real exciting thing, but it's like, it was fairly standard band stuff at the time though. Like the stories sounded more exciting than they actually were. Like they were one of those bands that had stories about them. Which always happens when a band breaks up and then kind of maintains an audience or finds a new audience after their breakup. Then it becomes this like legendary, like, oh my God, this band was incredible, but they broke up before they got their due. And it's like, yeah, who knows if they would have actually gotten their due if they stayed at the time, but whatever. So
Not
with this
doing
band,
what they were doing. I think they went as high as you could go.
Yeah.
Doing that kind of screamo. It would take a long time for that kind of screamo to be, and honestly, that style of screamo, new bands doing it now, they're still playing the same level of shows. They're not. Yeah. It's when those legendary screamo bands reunite that you get booked at mid-sized venues.
So Hot Cross forms in the year 2000 when Greg Drudy and Matt Smith form a three-piece with also Saetia band member Adam Marino. They wanted to start a new band that was focused on fast, loud, and lean punk music. Greg Drudy played drums, Matt Smith played guitar, and Adam Marino played guitar and sang. They then brought in bassist Josh Jakubowski, but then Adam Marino winds up having to drop out of the band due to just being too busy with his other band, which was Error Type 11. So they rehearsed as a three-piece for a while. They bring in Casey Boland to play second guitar. And they record some demos, and they're like, we need a better singer. Like, none of us are singers, so let's get somebody else to do this. So they reached out to Billy Werner, who was in Saetia, and he was currently living overseas, studying abroad. He was, I believe he was going back for his master's at this point, and they sent him the demo, and they'd say to Billy, like, hey, you want to do this thing? It's just this fun little, like, one-off thing, it's just something to do. Definitely no touring, though. Definitely no touring. And I read an interview with Billy, and he was like, he knew exactly what to tell me to get me interested in this band, because that is what he should have told me. And obviously, we wound up touring a lot. So he, once he's done with his abroad semester, he comes back to the U.S., and he had been basically writing lyrics and rehearsing songs himself. Like, he was listening to the demos, and I don't know if he was actually singing them out loud, but he was writing lyrics to them. And so he comes back, and not long after he returns to the U.S., he's supposed to go meet with a couple of the members at Penn Station, and then I think they're supposed to go to a show. Like, basically, like, as soon as he arrives in the country, they're supposed to play a show within, like, days of him arriving. And so he somehow misses this meetup, and he winds up, like, I'm just going to go to Philly by myself. And so he gets to Philly, he catches a cab, and he tells the cab driver to be like, take me to Tower Records. He's like, because there's going to be a flyer there for this show, and I don't know where it is, so I need to find out where the show is. So the cab takes him to Tower Records. He tells him, wait for me, and he does. He goes inside, he grabs a flyer, finds the address where it is, and then comes back out, and then goes to the show, and gets on stage and starts playing, basically, as soon as he gets there, because he hadn't rehearsed with them at all. And it was just like, we're doing the show. And the show was with Page 99 as City of Caterpillar, which is their first show. And just jumped up there. So they wind up releasing a debut EP called A New Set of Lungs in 2001. They do a split with Light the Fuse and Run. And they also released their debut full-length album, Cryonics, in 2003. They are signed to Level Plane Records. Signed. It's Greg's. It's his own label, so it's just, yep, you're on my label. And eventually, they do the EP, they do the LP, and then for some reason, Matt Smith and Josh Jacobowski decide to just trade their instruments. So they switch bass and guitar, and they then record an EP called Fair Trades and Farewells in 2004. And then Josh winds up leaving the band because he wants to start a career as a recording engineer. And the band signs to Equal Vision Records and Hope Division, which was a sub-label that the only thing they had on there that I'd even really noticed was Action Reaction was on there, which was like a post-Element 101, I want to say. And was that a Jason Gleason too? I don't remember. There's a connection there. But they sign to Equal Vision, and they go in to record a record. They record with Mike Hills of the bands Tombs and Anodyne. And they had a great time recording the record. And then when they give it to Josh to, like, I think he was going to be the one to mix it. No, here's what happens. So they get the recordings back, and they're really unhappy with the production. They're just like, this is weird. There's like a lot of static in places. There's random noises. There's a lot of like performance errors, like a lot of mistakes that were in there, that were left in there. And they were like super bummed by that because they had such a good time recording with him. They're like, this is going to be great. And then they really liked Mike too, but just he just was not the right guy for it. Like, I think he was just too far gone. And so there's different kind of tellings of this part of it where there's one version that says they said, hey Josh, can you fix this? And they like gave him the recordings, but they had a deadline for it. And he was like, it's going to take me way longer than this deadline to get this. And then they decide, well, let's just re-record the entire record with Josh. And so there's a version of the story that says we told Equal Vision and they were bummed, but they were understanding because they didn't want to put something out that we weren't happy with. And there's another version that says Equal Vision told them to re-record it. So I don't know which one's the truth. One was closer to when the events happened, and I think that's the one that says they told them to re-record it. There's others tellings later that says that they chose to re-record it, and the label was like, okay, but anyway, nobody was happy with it, so they're just like, let's re-record this record. So they redo it. The album gets pushed to 2027. It was supposed to come out in 2006. And they do the whole record. And it's recorded at Josh's studio, Cannon Road Studios in Freehold, New Jersey, where Hot Cross had previously recorded their 2004 EP, Fair Trades and Farewells. And Josh also recorded albums by Lick Golden Sky, Reds, A Life Once Lost, The Sound of Animals Fighting, and he recorded Sink or Swim by the Gaslight Anthem.
You said
Not at
Freehold,
his studio.
I was going to say.
Do what?
You said Freehold, New Jersey, right?
Yeah, but they didn't record that record there. So I guess they used a bigger studio to do that one. But yeah, Josh, he does some backing vocals on Kill the Name and Silence is Failure. And this is the first Hot Cross record with only one guitarist on it. And yeah, it was released on vinyl and picture disc on Level Plane and Paranoid Records in the US. And it was released on CD on Hope Division and Equalvision. It was reissued in 2023 on cassette by Sands of Time Recordings. And Equalvision at this time, in 2007, released music by Pierce the Veil, Dustin Kinsrew of Thrice, doing his solo stuff, Circus Survives record, there's a Fall of Troy album that year, Chiodos, Modern Life is War, and there's like a Fear Before the March of Flames EP in there too. Paranoid was a short-lived French record label that released albums by Amanda Woodward, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was members of Amanda Woodward, because the first two albums on that label were the first two Amanda Woodward releases, and they're from like the same city in France. And then Level Plane at this time was doing the Tides Giant split, which is a North Carolina band. Also, Destination Time Tomorrow by Graf Orlock was that year too, on 07, on Level Plane. And then yeah, the album cover is by a tattoo artist named Miles Carr, whose other notable album covers include Dano Striped Tiger and the Sinaloa split. He also did the Fjord Lives, whatever the name of that. It's the post-Earth Crisis band with Carl. And he did an album cover for Massa Nera in 2022. And the original, the album layout is done by Ryan Patterson of Coliseum fame. So, yeah, okay, that's pretty much where I'm at there. We could do the breakup later.
Slip past the first way we went about deciding the exact moment. Faith being kicked out, killing fields are opened again, and so they tell me, and so they kill me. Each night a new death to celebrate the blood, mandatory silence, and so they tell me. But I'll never have it the same way that you buy and sell me. Slash and slander marks the name of this game, and solely legend tells me only letters that I've thrown away. Heart stop motion, cardiac silence for a head full of notions. Tangled the cord and self-tied back to avoid the burn. No way I'll feel you, I never learn. Giving up, giving in, slipping up, I'm trying once again. Giving up, I'm giving in, slipping up, I'm trying once again. Giving up, giving in, slipping up, I'm trying once again. Giving up, I'm giving in, slipping up, I'm trying once again. Drift and tether.
Revisiting it, what did you think of it? When was the last time you heard it, you think?
Yeah, the last time that I heard anything from this record would have been 10 years ago. More than that.
10? Wow, that long.
Yeah, and I was wrong. I don't have this one on vinyl. I do have Cryonics, but I don't
Okay.
have this one. I must have bought the CD of this. Weirdly. I don't know why I would have bought the CD. I already had it downloaded.
Yeah, we did that weird shit. It's like, we're supporting the bands, but you're buying it from a store. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you're kind of supporting them, like, long distance, but they already got their support by being purchased.
Yeah. They already sold it wholesale to the
Yeah.
store. So
So you're supporting a local record store there. Because you probably, unless you got it at Best Buy.
no.
I think
I probably got it at Static Age on CD.
Yeah.
For some
Yeah,
reason.
we're still buying CDs when we were going there the first few times.
So, yeah, I haven't listened to this record. I mean, I haven't listened to this record in full since college. I maybe have heard some songs
I think it's funny.
then, but like, yeah, I think the last time I was semi-regularly listening to this record was like 2010. It was still in college.
Which is funny because you definitely wore the shirt for like another 5 years at least, like regularly. It's a good shirt though. It's a really good shirt.
It's
that
probably
cool.
a Ryan Patterson design, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I would assume so. It's a good looking shirt. It was a fun like green, like a teal green kind of color there, aquamarine little thing.
Yeah. It's like a Grecian face.
Yeah, it's a good looking shirt. Like I get it.
Design.
I get why you wore it as much as you did.
Yeah, I certainly have pictures of me wearing it in like 2012 at least.
Yeah, I think there's like you at the kitchen table on your birthday, like at our house, parents' house, picture with your wife next to you.
So it's been a long time.
I was trying to think of when I would have listened to it last, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know because they weren't really one of my bands that I listened to that much. So I would have heard it. I definitely would have heard it in the 2010s at some point, but like maybe just once. I don't remember. Though when I put this on and we got to the second track on the album, I was like, oh, I know this song. Like immediately remembered Turncoat Revolution. I was just like, oh, I remember these riffs. Yeah, I remember that.
I never met a traitor I didn't like.
You mentioning lyrics right now, I'll go ahead and say this. I read lyrics. I don't know what these songs are about. It's all poetry. So,
It's not about anything.
yeah.
I don't
There
think
might be
these
some
songs are
meaning,
really-
but it's abstract, obtuse, purposefully like hidden lyrics. It's just,
Screamo lyrics.
it's screamo lyrics. Yeah.
It's evocative.
Yeah, but what does it mean? What, is that a Blades of Glory reference? I've never even seen that movie. I just know the commercials for it.
It's mind-boggling. I actually watched that movie recently.
Yeah.
That's one of those DVDs my wife bought when she was a teenager. So we like watch it every now and then.
Yeah.
It's just like a purely nostalgia-driven. Just like, this is not a great movie, but got some good laughs in it.
Look, John Heater got a lot of rolls off Napoleon Dynamite, and none of them good, but
So, 15 years
wow.
of properly listening to this record. And I remember it very well.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking how memorable it was. Like every song, almost, there's all these little riffs all over this record that I'm like, I remember how that goes. I remember that how that goes. I remember there are so many lines that are just like teed up. Like they're just like set up for Billy to swing. And I'm like, that's such good like band interplay, like dynamics and song structure, like works so well on this record. What was it's funny because it's almost disappointing in how little I was surprised while listening to it, because I knew it had been so long. I knew it had been a really long time since I'd properly listened to the record. And so like knowing that fact made me question how well I was going to remember it. I was like, oh, this will be interesting to revisit, because kind of similar to the Paul Bearer record I was thinking of, it was like, this would be one where it's like, I loved this very intensely for a few years, and it has been a really long time since then. This is a record that I feel like I need to kind of put a little bit under a microscope to analyze and think about it objectively and try to say, like, does this hold up? You know, and I put it on, and I'm like, oh, I don't even need to listen to this. It's like first song, I'm like, oh, I know every turn that's coming. I know this whole record from front to back, and I haven't heard it in 15 years.
It's wild that our brains can do that. Like something you haven't heard in so long, but because you listen to it so much, it's just in there. And it never disappeared. It was just in there the whole time.
The only, like, I guess, like, what I found interesting or what felt like was a new experience in listening to this record was, I think, more informed by a lot of music that I've listened to since then. And it was almost like just the like pieces just locked into place. And it was like, oh, this is at the drive-in. For one, mean, that's like the most overwhelming, obvious influence and similarity. It's just like, but like hearing it and going, oh, this is a true screamo band doing their Relationship of Command. But because it came out a few years later, because I wasn't familiar with At the Drive-In when I first heard it, I never made that connection. And I think also was maybe a little more aware of this at the time, but what I realized was more clear to me now was why a big factor in why I was so obsessive about this record and this band, where they were doing a lot of things that Alexis on Fire was doing, who I was super into at that time. And it's just like, and even like, I mean, there's certainly, you know, more in the screamo lane of things where it's like the, you know, the chaotic riffiness, and that I've always understood, like, okay, why this appeals to me, and it's very much in like my wheelhouse and what I was listening to at that time. And there's other bands that I've been a little more attached to and maintained more of an interest in over the years, but I'm kind of curious, like, why they fell out of my music listening rotation so hard. But they did. They just, like, not even out of college, I'm just like, I'm done with you. And unintentionally, not like, oh, I'm sick of hearing Hot Cross, because I kept wearing the shirt. I still liked them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I bought Cryonics on vinyl, you know, probably 2012 or later or something. So I've heard other Hot Cross stuff in more recent years, but
yeah, you brought up a few things there. So I think, okay, the last thing about like dropping out of them, as far as not listening to them as much, it might have to do with just the fact that they were done, you know?
Well, they were long done.
Yeah, like long gone. And you maybe just like got all you needed out of it at the time. You listened to it a lot, and then, you know, there's nothing new coming out from them, so there's not like this like urge to go back and re-listen to earlier material. So I could see that. And then, yeah, shifting tastes and getting into a little bit more, I think we just got into more melodic stuff in general, because we were very much into the chaotic and the, you know, like we were listening to tons of The Chariot and Norma Jean and that kind of stuff, like, and Botch and Coalesce and all that kind of stuff. So the chaotic kind of sounding stuff, and then getting into more melodic stuff later, you know, you're just going to kind of drop out. There is a datedness a little bit to the sound as well. Like, it feels very much like a 2007 record. Like, when I kept reading reviews, and a lot of the reviews, these are like more modern, like rate your music type comments where people were talking about the album, and a lot of people were constantly saying stuff like, yeah, it's just them doing their own At the Drive-In, and a lot of people saying like, they went Fall of Troy on this one.
Yeah.
Which
There
is like,
kind of
about
Fall
that
of Troy noodliness, but it's not as
yeah.
it's not as proggy, and also Fall of Troy is not the only band that was doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's kind of funny too. A lot of people were very critical of this record when it came out, because they were like, "Oh, it's too glossy, it's too well produced," and it's like, man, y'all should have heard the earlier version then. I wonder if those exist anywhere where you could hear them. But everybody was very much like, everything else they did before this was so much better. And
I never felt that way.
Yeah,
This was always the preferred for me.
I can't even tell you if I've listened to Cryonics before in my life. Like, I definitely listened to Risk Revival a bunch, but I don't remember listening to...
It's good. It's just not as good. It's rougher around the edges. It's
a level playing record.
It's well constructed.
This feels like a Ecovision record. It's really what it feels like. Like,
Yeah.
There's a little money behind it. It sounds pretty good. It's kind of keeping up with some of what's happening at the time. And yeah, the Cryonics is probably the more level playing record and a little bit closer to what Saetia used to do. But here's my hot take. I like this record better than Saetia.
Oh, yeah. I've always felt that way. I kind of don't like Saetia.
I mean, they're the kind of screamo I don't gravitate towards, generally.
They never did anything for me. Even within that style of screamo, there's other stuff I would rather listen to. Saetia, just that band in particular, I never understood the legacy.
I think it's a story thing. And I don't know that it's even Yeah. They broke up at their height. I mean, it's kind of like the Orchid thing, and I never got into Orchid the way everybody else did, you know?
Yeah. I prefer other Will Killingsworth bands.
Yeah. Most of them.
But Orchid I enjoy. I tried listening to Saetia when I was at the height of my Scrams kid, and it just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
So I really don't feel like going back to it now.
Why not? They're back. I do think this is interesting. This was like a divergent from them too, because you know they went from being a 2-guitar band to a 1-guitar band, so it was their first time trying to write like that, and like they redid the album. I'm sure they didn't rewrite anything, but they might have played something differently between the first recording and the new recording. But yeah. Well, okay. Here's this. Did you like it? Revisiting it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I think it still holds up. I think it's a good record. I see it's not something I want to listen to all the time now, and screamo in general just isn't something that I want to listen to that often. But the things that this record does well are things that I still enjoy about other bands at the drive-in. I think Relationship with Command is a fantastic record. I don't want to listen to it every month or anything, but I'm not going to be mad if I hear it, you know? And there's things on here that remind me of Bear vs. Shark, which I still love those records. Again, I don't listen to them a ton, but
again, I think that chalks up to there's only 2 records.
Records.
And you've heard them to death.
Yeah.
I bet I don't listen to as much Bars of Gold either as I was when they were putting stuff out, but
and even like I said, how I felt like this record had similarities to things that like Alexis on Fire was doing, and I've revisited Alexis on Fire stuff in recent years, and I'm like, yeah, this is still good. This holds up. This is enjoyable to listen to. And kind of even further, taking it further than that, like listening to this record, I was thinking like there are certain, I can't quite put my finger on what particulars there are, but there's a certain culmination of aspects. It's just certain little facets of this record that if there were bands doing this now, I would want to hear them. Like,
that would rule.
I want to know who those bands are. If there's somebody out there doing that, like, please send it to me because I want to hear that. I want to hear what that sounds like in 2025. I think that there is still interesting things to do with this kind of technical, melodic post-hardcore.
It's funny. That sound was really big for a couple years there. It's really just like a good, maybe like a 5-year stretch or so. Maybe like 7. Maybe starting in the year 2000. Let's say like post Relationship at Command up until like this point, 07, maybe a little 08. And it's funny because like after that, it moved into the more like, the emo revival sound, the Cap'n Jazz inspired type stuff. And then even into the more like Mineral Braid influenced emo was, the Wave, all that kind of stuff happening. And we've come back around to the Wave and the emo revival, but we haven't come back to this period. And I don't know if it's because of its association with like this scene. It's very scene core, and people are kind of embarrassed by that time period.
I mean, a lot of the scene core, like a lot of the fall of Troy, that Swan core, there's lots of Swan core bands now.
That's true. I forgot about Swancore. But that's so Dance Gavin Dance inspired too, which is also another later thing. It's not from 07. That's from like 2010, 2011.
Yeah. And I've heard that stuff, and I see where it comes from, but it's not this.
Yeah, like I know what the roots of Swancore is this, but they're not doing this.
Yeah.
They're doing the imitators after.
There's no Ditro. There's no melodic French screamo.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no Off Miners or Amanda Woodwards or Neil Perry's anymore. I mean, there's not even any Yaphet Kodos,
Yeah, I mean, there's none of that emo core.
The closest you get, like, all those Tom Schlatter bands, like You and I, like, but that's just because Tom Schlatter keeps making new bands. Like, he just never goes away. So his, like, Hundreds of Owl, But yeah, there's not this. There's not, I mean, as big as At the Drive-In was, and still is, and viewed upon, like, very well still to this day. Nobody's really doing that right now. There might be pieces of it that influenced it, but it's not a big trend. I mean, maybe it's because Omar and Cedric kind of went on and like kept doing stuff and moving the needle, but
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, at this point, is Mars Volta more influential than At the Drive-In?
probably they were more popular. They sold more records, but that was based off the inertia of At the Drive-In and not so much the actual,
Yeah. Like, there's little elements of this trickled into, like, The Wave, the La Dispute, and Touche Amore kind of bands, and
Yeah, there's a little there, yeah. Touche Amore definitely is from the At the Drive-In school, but they're not as technical as those bands were, or this one. I mean, even in 2025, Saetia is still viewed as the more important band.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, Hot Cross was the better one, though.
Well, and
Like-
Saetia, I understand historically that they're more important,
right.
but they're still regarded as the better.
Yeah.
Like, Saetia did reunion shows. We're never going to get a Hot Cross reunion show.
Yeah, which I'd be more excited for, I mean, it's very similar to, like, we're probably never going to get a Jets to Brazil reunion, but we got that Jawbreaker reunion, and it's just like, yeah, it's because the first one was more important, so you're just going to get the first one. You're not going to get the follow-up reunions as much, which is disappointing, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there was a little bit of backlash, too, to this record, too. People were just like, oh, you sold out, you went corporate, as much as, like, Equal Vision Records is corporate, it's the label started by fucking Krishna guys, like fucking what's his, Ray Capo, like is Ray, right? He helped start Equal Vision, so like I get it. They shifted their kind of like what they were putting out, especially in the 2000s, where it was just like, yeah, I guess we're gonna chase some trends, because there was like an interview I read with Hot Cross around it might have been like right after the breakup, or it was an interview with Billy. Billy does lots of interviews, but there was an interview that was talking about how like, and now there's bands like Aiden on Equal Vision, and like being like a big complaint. It's like, I mean, but Aiden also is kind of a continuation of the type of bands that were on that label already, so it wasn't like that drastic a turn. They just didn't they were just meant to be more commercial. They were just following the same trends that all the other labels were doing at the same time, though. Vagrant was doing a lot of this kind of stuff, Even Victory has stuff like this during this time period. I mean, their bread and butter was still like metalcore, but I mean, it's selling. And as long as you don't have like an actual like moral objection to like what you're putting out, I mean, it's fine. If it's glossy and has high production values, like they had Coheed and Cambria on Equal Vision, they had a bunch of weird stuff on it. Fall of Troy is kind of weird to be as popular as they were, Equal Vision had made odd choices. Like as far as like what they were putting out, it's like, oh, it's close to what's popular right now, but it's not. It's like a step away. It's definitely got more experimentation in it than you find in a lot of it. I don't know what Equal Vision is now. Now it's probably just a whatever sells kind of label. But Saetia they were the real deal. That's why Saetia, I think, is still regarded as highly as they are. I mean, I guess I didn't really say my feelings on it, but I really enjoyed the record. Like, revisiting it, I was like, man, I haven't heard this in forever. The last one that I have is in 2010, where I listened to something on Last FM, so that's 15 years ago. But even then, that was like 2 songs, so I don't even know. And I had a good time listening to it. And my one takeaway was like, man, we don't have bands like this anymore. Like, this type of screamo with a budget, post-hardcore with a budget, doesn't really exist anymore. Even though everybody can kind of like record on their own and do whatever they want at home, or their DIY studios, nothing sounds this good in that lane. I will say, if we're going to be critical of the record, the back half's kind of weak.
Yeah.
It loses some steam.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair.
Like, it's not bad. It's just like, all right, this record's a little long. It's a 40-plus minute record, right?
Yeah.
So that's more of just like fatigue, album fatigue, more so than like the actual quality of music isn't as strong. It's a 43-minute record, so a little long, but like this should be like a 30-minute album. Like, I don't know that the sound needs to be like a very long, but this is also a time period where a lot of records are still 45 minutes at this time period. The album cover is pretty cool. I like the album cover a lot. I'm surprised that artist hasn't done more, but he does have a very specific kind of style.
Yeah, it's a little Polish movie poster.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and it's also his tattoo style. Like, I was looking up his tattoo, like, 'cause his Instagram is just all his tattoos. And it is this style, and I think he's done some actual this cover on people too. It's very Eastern European kind of like abstract art there.
Yeah. Ugly faces.
Yeah. Monsters, big teeth. Yeah. Look at the tattoos he's doing now. It's still very much this particular style, which is kind of cool. I mean, it wouldn't mesh with every tattoo style. So, like, if you're going to get his art, I feel like you would just want to get art like this to kind of go with it. But
yeah, it's kind of odd that he is a tattoo artist, because this kind of uniquely stylized art and very abstract, not abstract, but surreal.
Yeah.
Kind of art people don't do this a lot.
Yeah, it's
tattooing.
not
They don't do it well, and they don't do it in this like vibrant color and like technical, like detailed, dense line work.
Yeah.
Like this, it's more in the like ignorant style tattoo where you just like, oh, it's an ugly little face, but it's just like a stick figure, you know? Like it's,
Yeah, these are pretty elaborate. Like, I'm looking at it now. You also have to really like his art. This isn't something that you're gonna like. You have to really be into it, because some of it I really like, and some of it I'm like, I don't like that at all. Like, it's yeah. As a tattoo, like, I would be like, all right, show me what you're gonna do. Like, I mean, that's how all tattoos work, and you know, want them to be happy with it, but you probably have to lay a lot of groundwork down with him to be like, okay, I want this kind of thing you do, and this kind of thing, you know, like really pinpointing it. Because I just saw one that he did where it was just like one of the, you know, the character from Blade Runner, and it was just like, oh, you shouldn't do this kind. You should only do your own original designs. Like, this artwork doing like just other things, existing things, this doesn't work. I want this to be like a Polish fairy tale from the 1968, you know.
yeah. It's a cool art. I
Yeah.
like looking at it, but I don't want it. No, I don't want this tattoo.
No. It looks cool, but yeah, I don't want it tattooed. Well, let's wrap up the story of Hot Cross. There's not much more to it. They basically toured constantly throughout their run. They did 6 months straight on the road, which is just like, that, why? You didn't have to do that. And
We're homeless. We have to.
yeah, that's true. You gave up everything to be on the road. And your other option is go home to your parents' house. And yeah, so this was their final record. They would announce they're going on indefinite hiatus on MySpace in 2007. So, like, right after this record comes out, a couple months later, they're like, yeah, we're done. Hiatus only. But they said, they're like, yeah, we had families and shit. We were too old, is kind of their reasoning. You know, they'd already done the first band stuff. So, like, a lot of them had kids already, you know, and were married and had real jobs. Like, Billy was, like, working at colleges, I think, and he was working on his master's or more stuff later too. So, like, he was also like working while he was in Hot Cross. I don't know how he did that. If they're on the road for 6 months straight, I don't know how he was able to work during that time, but I guess some early email type work in 2007. But they go on hiatus. This hiatus has never ended, so they are still on hiatus. They come back any day now, though. But Matt Smith would go on to play in Total Fucking Destruction briefly, and that's kind of it as far as what everybody else did. Like, they all did some stuff. There's a story about, like, as soon as they were done, everybody, the three of them minus Billy, got in and started writing songs again for a new band. And they were like, we wanted to do something new, but something different. So it's like, as soon as Hot Cross is finished, they're already like, what's next? Except for Billy. Billy's like, I'm done. But they wrote songs, and they said they kept writing songs for a couple months, and they wanted to do something new, but they just kept accidentally making more Hot Cross. And he's like, and we didn't want to keep doing Hot Cross. We wanted to do a different thing, but that's like all we knew how to write together. So we just like scrapped the project because it was like, if we do this, people are just going to say it's Hot Cross again, and we don't want to do that again. So And then, yeah, they've had some stuff, but nothing big. Like, this is the last big thing they've all done. Except Saetia's back now. So, and we're getting, like, new Saetia music. I'm very curious to hear what that sounds like. That being said, the most interesting part of Hot Cross is the guitar work, and none of those guys were in Saetia. So, it was just Billy and the drummer.
And Billy doesn't even sound the same in Saetia.
No, right, yeah.
I mean,
different
he'll
vocals
probably sound
entirely.
Now, more
Yeah, he
like
might.
He did in Hot Cross.
It might make me like the new Saetia better than if it sounds more like Hot Cross. If Billy sounds more like he does in Hot Cross than he did in Saetia, I might like it a little more. I guess it depends on what the other people in the band have done since then and how they've changed their sound. But yeah, that's it. I think they're just kind of thought of as the post Saetia band. Oh yeah, that's what Billy did after Saetia. Like, oh okay. I don't know what their legacy is today. I don't think they have Hot Cross themselves. I don't think has much of a legacy today. People don't really talk about them.
No, I mean, I think they get listened to by people that go through. I guess people still do this, where they find out about screamo and then they listen to every single screamo band.
Yeah, probably. I guess so.
And so they're in there.
Yeah.
Maybe not canonized, but they're in there.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what people do now.
I mean, Hot Cross has 2,500 monthly listeners on Spotify, and they only have this album on Spotify. It's the only thing that got uploaded.
It's not terrible numbers for a band who hasn't done anything in nearly 20 years. So, I mean, I bet people are coming to them if they're getting into, like, Circle Takes the Square. I bet that's how they're coming to Hot Cross. Because Circle Takes the Square has about 7,000 monthly listeners. If you look at the similar artists our fans also like, you've got The Saddest Landscape, Wow Owls. That's interesting to see them in there. United Nations, We Were Skeletons, The Jambonnet, I Create, Majority Rule, Loma Prieta, Kodan Armada. Wow. What?
Yeah.
Kodan Armada has 7,000 monthly listeners on Spotify.
That band never made sense to me either. They've always had a certain legacy. And I've heard it, and I'm like, it's fine.
They were $7-inch band. Like, that's... Yeah. Kodan Armada. Just an also ran. Just nothing but an also ran, but yet they still have as many. That's wild. Because Hot Cross had money behind them, at least, some money. And, well, Owls has 700 monthly listeners, so that feels right, though. That's a band who's been inactive even longer than Hot Cross. They at least had one reunion period, but Saddest Landscape has like 8,000, so that kind of makes sense. But well, what do you want to rate it?
I'd say it's about a 4-star record.
Yeah, I was right there at 4-star, and then I did the thing in my head where I was like, let's see what happens when I take the 1/4 star away to make it a 3.75, and that feels too low to me, so I bumped it back to a 4. I think that's a fun way to like really like hone it in to make sure what score you're giving it is really right. If you take it away, and if that feels right too, it maybe should be that one.
It's like you're dialing in a carburetor. It's just like, can I turn this? Nope, that's running rougher. Yeah, go back.
Yeah, go back. Yeah. It's a good record. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed revisiting it, and this sound was very nostalgic to me. All right, well, I think that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. And you can follow us on all forms of social media at punklautopod, punklautopod@gmail.com, and our voicemail line, 202-688-PUNK. Yeah, so that should be it. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.